Nashon, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Joanna and team. Good evening, everybody. As introduced by the team, my name is Nashon Mudala, all the way from Tanzania. I think, as you have seen in my bio, I'm so happy and really thank my brother Ronald for having this opportunity to share. Been working with the ISO for the past number of years, supporting organization, being part of the transitions in most of the updates of the standards. And today, with you guys, we'll be discussing around Clause 8. Clause 8, which is more of the work. We saw how Gladys took us through the foundation, and then we had Dennis on the another part, and then Mary yesterday with the planning. So when we talk about operations, this is now is more beyond the policies. We are looking forward to have practice at hand. We're looking forward to have see things learning. Now, since we set the foundation, we put the plans together, we committed some of the resources. Now, in this clause, we should be able to be confident that at least before even if I could be the auditor, and today me and you will be the consultants for prime distributor, we want to be at the comfortable end that we know that this system is really live and is really happening. So basically, this clause is meant to take you in overview. So before this, the session ends today, we're looking forward to achieve the following all together. So I want to deep dive in terms of the Clause 8, the operation and all the requirement related in each sub-clause, basically covering the 3 standards as we discussed. And also want to apply operational planning and the control related to our company prime distributors issues like customer requirement, procurement, warehousing. How do we identify and preserve the goods and that and product related to the operations? And also, as part of the clause, also we touch base on the environmental and health and safety controls, issues like emergency response and overall our role of protecting the environment and the protection of people. Last but not least, want to make sure that before you guys switch off, you are able to recognize the objective evidence that auditor may become comfortable in case you are part of the system. Anyway, the objective here is not to certify the auditor. Again, we are not here to make you guys pass the audit, though passing the audit is really what measures that your system is active. But we want to be honestly be able to demonstrate honestly that we are competent and to demonstrate that the system is really live and really working. So before further ado, I thought it's good to start covering and touching base with regard to the backbone of the 3 standards. We understand that all built under the high-level structure and PDCA SECO. Mary touched it yesterday. That we have planned to check Act, and yesterday we started the support, which was like started doing some of the things. Now we have all the plans set, we have the foundation of the policies created, we have aligned with whatever the legal requirement is. Now this is more of looking forward to see putting things in practice by means of all the things that were put in plans. So operations will entail all the things from verifying whether it was planned properly, and now we need to practice it, and they will see different perspective. And to be honest, the main focus for this session basically will focus into many examples. I've prepared a number of examples now because we all have the documentation, we all have the systems, we all have the plans. So when we are trying to discuss around Clause 8, which is operation, we want to go different angles of prime distributors to see how each process works and how it can be adequately demonstrated to ensure that we are really living the standard requirement. So that is part of the do, and we have to do things to make things done. As an overview, we understand this is the high level on how the clause is structured. I try to display different clauses in both of the 3 standards. quality management system being one of the standard which is having a lot of requirements. And basically, most of these requirements in quality management system, they really fit into the nature of the operation of the prime distributors. Only one or slight clauses that might not be fitting directly, but we'll touch base to see how that could be considered in the implementation as far as prime distributors is concerned. So in this standard, basically we are covering about operational planning and control. Remember in clause 6, in part of the clause 4, we talked about planning, setting the objectives, so setting the criteria for testing whether the system is running. On this, basically the general part of this with the foundation of the clause is trying to outline how do we now put the control. We plan it, and then how do we control whatever we planned? And then there is a requirement for products and services that were put, and that basically you can see on the right-hand side, we have a listed number of records, documented information by means of documents or any kind of evidence that might surface to meet a particular requirement. And again, this is just as an example. You can have a range of evidence that might surface to evidence that something is being really implemented. Also, it is about design development, which might not be the larger percent of what prime distributors is doing. They don't do much of the designing, but we touch base some of the development of the product that normally do after they have bought. There is some of the activity that might be touched by the clause 8.3. And also clause 8.4, which is of more control of external providers. This is really fitting because they have the suppliers, they have also some of the activities, some of the purchases. So this we have to be explained well and how it is happening. The standard also requires us to look up about the production and service provision, which is all about how do we deliver the service, how do we check, how do we preserve material, how do we bring things into perspective by means of the producing the service required. And in this, we expect that we have the clear working instruction with the SOPs related to this as well. Release of products and services. Now, because they are dealing with the customers, and their customers is the number one priority. You saw in day one, we have a slogan where they are targeting to impress customer. So basically, we are looking forward to see how the SLA is structured and how we both parts by means of prime distributors and their customers are both happy at the end of release of particular service or product, and how this is well documented and structured, evidenced enough as the standard requirements. So issues like sign-off, acceptance, we see all of those. And also, last but not least, control of non-conforming outputs. So some of the product purchased, we understand despite of having some of the criteria during purchase, during processing, we still have some of the lapses that might happen along the path. So these have to be it's more like part of the clause 9, which is more of like checking, but we wanted to make sure that we don't fail as part of the operation. We don't wait until the cycle goes to clause 9, but you can still early identify some of the non-conformities, some of the things that went wrong as part of the operations, basically. And again, some of the clauses are repetitive, as you can see on the rest of the standards. Emergency response is another part that we have also to cover in these other standards. So this is just a nutshell, and as a summary, if we are to implement this clause 8, if you are to demonstrate that you have processes, you are set to be certified, or you want to demonstrate that your system is live, these are the requirements as part of the standard that you are supposed to focus and they will be able to demonstrate. Yeah, so the world is changing, and as life moves faster, we are happy that at high level, these standards have been upgraded from time to time, and I thought of it's good to include how this clause is impacted on the recent changes of our standards, especially the two standards on the environment and the quality management system that is about to be launched next month. So these are some of the cloud that has been impacted, and you can see what has changed and why it matters. Basically, to our today's discussion, we are trying to look on how our company distributors fit. So the first change, for your information, we have 8.1, which is basically requiring that the scope becomes bigger for controlling from controlling outsourced processes to externally provided services, products, and services. So it has gone further to not limiting outsourcing. It has gone further to control even other external activities to ensure that we have full ownership. On emergency situation, identified through risk and opportunity, that's assessment. And so this is to ensure that all potential emergencies have been taken into consideration as part of planning, not just as a foreseen event. So it's like you intend to plan that something will really happen. We don't understand the concept of risk assessment is like you plan back for good intention. Is like you anticipate something bad, what we don't want, is likely to happen. But when doing so, we are like, we don't want it to happen, but the intention is we don't want surprises. So this is what has been changed. You don't want to put issues like emergencies like a surprise, like an foreseen event. We want to have a pre-assessment since we have a lot of risk assessment, a lot of planning in clause 4 and clause 6. And again, the expectation we have to make sure that not just having the plans are available, but they are really tested, emergency response are really conducted, and the rest of the controls. On the quality management system side, we have some of the sub-clauses impacted. 8.21, that is customer communication, which must proactively cover contingents, business continuity plans for supply and disruption. So here it is insisting that we don't wait. I remember to have experienced this. I think in Tanzania last year we have political chaos as a result of the ongoing election. I think we're all aware of the crisis. Some of the customers were initiating this requirement. We are going to their suppliers asking, how are you prepared to make us not impacted? So I like the way this standard have went further, not to wait for the client to ask. Instead, you consider that. So before even the client is asking, you want to ensure that now, because you understand the part of the focus of this standard is to impress the customer, and the customer focus is the priority. We want to consider business continuity and the contingency plans on how to manage issues that might impact our customers. This is a lovely one that have been upgraded. External provider requirement broadened beyond technical specs to customer and interested party expectation based things like ethics, sustainability, and the expectation here is to have we have the approved supplier list criteria, and I like the way the new standard is going to stress that when we are doing supply evaluation, we are not just considering that this supplier is just good technically and they can deliver, is good technically and is having good prices. I like the way that the focus is more than prices, and the requirement is now that quality and delivery would be part of the mandatory requirement. 8.5.3, customer property weighting, a little bit relaxed slightly. So the control intent here is unchanged, to be honest, and you just need to keep existing identification and protection procedures that you have. Just some review of some of the wording. So that is an nutshell in terms of what have been upgraded. But at the bottom line, you should start doing something. You should start working some of the things. You should start thinking on how you embark into the transition. We know we have 3 years, but for your system to be live, we are looking for your nearest internal audit or external audit to go and cover these new changes. Right. Let's come to work. We are all consultants. We are knocking into the doors of prime distributors. For those who missed the context, this is the company that is dealing with importation and the procurement of different goods. So they have different processes like receiving, inspection, warehouse, inventory, order processing, import distribution. This is like kind of a high level scope. And our basically our IMS implementation is trying not to go far from this scope, which is basically importation, procurement, receiving, inspection, warehousing, inventory management, the packaging, labeling, product kitting, order processing, dispatch and distribution of industrial maintenance, cleaning and hygiene, and facility products. So this is all what is all about. And again, we remember in terms of geographical scope, this company is world spread, is East African company. We have headquarters in Nairobi, and basically they have the main warehouse in Mombasa, but the rest of the areas like Nakuru, Eldoret, we have major depots. We have depot in Arusha and Dar es Salaam, Entebbe and Kampala. So it's quite a huge company, to be honest, widespread, they're doing business very well. And we are looking forward on how to support this company to have their system really live and really working through Clause 8, which is operation. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you are ready. Let us go to work. Now, we put this summary just in a nutshell for you to understand on how we should approach toward implementing this clause as far as this company is concerned. So we all understand, and I already mentioned the high-level scope of prime distributors. This is just to show you some of the process flow on what we expect step by step should have been followed. So, guys, just to bring you into context, if the company is willing to really implement ISO, it means you are officially confirming that you want to go away from shortcuts, away from doing business as usual. You want to be systematic and well structured. So, and this is the meaning of all the previous clauses. They are put us into perspective so that whenever we start becoming bees, becoming now doing the actual work that bring money to the organization, we are not like scattered, we are not like losing direction, because we already have the plan set, we already have the criteria set, we already have the objective set, and the policy well established. I'm re-insisting this because failure to plan is basically you are already failing. If you don't plan properly, you're already failing. So when we are speaking of Clause 8 implementation, is highly dependent on how you properly planned, on how Clause 6 was properly designed in terms of putting clear criteria. And my brother Dennis put it very clear, and it was really awesome in terms of how he was putting the examples on how we should try to put the clear and the smart plans so that we won't struggle during implementation or during operation. So as far as prime display is concerned, our first point basically, this is how it's gonna work. We're expecting the company to receive customer inquiry on either of the materials expect to be delivered to the customer, and that is again we still lie as part of the operational planning. We want to define what does the customer need, and this is very clear. That's why we say it as part of the first clause we're going to see in the next slide. You have to know exactly what is required. It's a little bit part of planning, and that's why the clause 8.1 is called operational planning and the control. So we receive customer inquiry, and once you receive the customer inquiry, you digest, you see it is within your scope, and then the prime distributor is going now to issue a quotation to the customer and telling the price of expected goods or services that is supposed to be delivered, and the customer is going to process using their own procurement system. But what you are looking for is prime distributor will be getting a customer order, and then they will have to review the order, and they receive the customer order. Now that have started to move to operational control, we have started thinking of issues of outsourcing, issues of management of change, because we might encounter some discrepancies, remember we received an order, we sent a quotation, and we received and then we got the customer order, and we might need to look carefully because what is next there is now not just negotiation again. The price is okay, but we need to make sure that whatever we deliver to the client or to the customer is really meeting whatever the customer wants. Remember, I already said the criteria. Now, after reviewing the order and checking that probably we're in line with the requirement that has been set and specification set, then we just check if we have the in the inventory, if we have the stock available, and that's where the issues of procurement come before we can even probably define when we can deliver. And that comes the issue of procurement if we don't have the stock available in our inventory, and then procurement a team will be involved from prime distributors, and that will involve sourcing out the requirement that has been defined by our customer, and then the supplier will deliver whoever is selected based on our criteria as the prime distributors will be able to deliver. Now, during delivery is where now the quality comes in. We have the receiving inspection, and this is very key where you are now where your work is now going to be valuable, to be honest. If you don't do checking at this point, and I've seen mess in one of the companies basically where the quality standard fails, is during the receiving where they fail to do proper checking. In the regardless of the entire process have went very, very okay. If this important step misses, you are going to miss the entire cycle because it is going to be against whatever the customer has requested. So we understand during the receiving, we have anything can happen between accepting or rejecting whatever has been delivered by the supplier. But if it has passed our inspection, we expect to kit out around in our warehouse storage, and then the inventory team will have to control it. Remember, it have to be packaged to the level that the customer require. So the packaging will have to be done, and then we have to do the labeling, and all the processes when we are doing the packaging. There is end-to-end traceability to ensure that we are packaging based on the required standard of the packaging material that the customer will be happy of. We are also confirming issues like the calibrated weighting scale. We don't want to compromise and make our customer not happy because there was a slight minor data basically in terms of some of the quantity of the consignment that was expected, and we want to ensure that the labels that have been put there are properly approved. And then on the customer labeling, we don't forget the issue of PPE and also approved SOP that would guide us on how to do proper labeling by considering all the branding, our and our customer expected branding basically. And then we do kitting before we provide for final inspection toward the end. And after the inspection, basically, we order picking, and then we pack, ready for dispatching. Remember, we manage end to end. If it is ready for dispatch, we do final verification before delivery, and all these are to be evidences. So we're looking forward, whoever is standing at any point of this cycle we are seeing here, to not just say by words, to not just go with the trust. I always say that ISO is the only standard that that doesn't believe in faith. You can't say in Swahili we used to say unaapa, you are like, don't you trust me? Warai masafi ya mtume. ISO doesn't understand that language, unfortunately. Everything will have to be verified. So you can see even at the dispatch point, we still need to do verification before we can issue to the transportation or to the variable fleet for delivery. Even the vehicle have to be inspected. What if along the way, the vehicle gets get breakdown and we get delayed, and maybe the nature of the material is affected by particular environmental factor, and again we are compromising the quality. So the record inspection, for the issue of health and safety as well, don't want to get instant as a matter of delivery. Remember, we're operating all over East Africa, depending on where the customer is located. We want to make sure that our fleet is well set and we are adequate enough to cover occupational road risk basically. Issues like channel management, issues like driver competence, journey planning, driver competence by means of defensive driving and the rest of the things. We have to be verified before we dispatch the vehicles to the customer. And finally, everything is okay. Customer received, we received the consignment, and what we are looking forward is to get the feedback, which we discuss later. Who is to trigger that? Do we ask for it, or we just remain quiet? We just observe whether the customer is smiling or not. But this is very important and is one of the key requirements on the 9001 quality standard. Yeah, so I thought to spend 3 minutes on this chart because this will make you understand end to end before you go to clause by clause on how basically prime distributors will be doing the work to bring money into the account. So from receiving inquiring, receiving the customer inquiry all the way to dispatching and ensure that the consignment is received by the customer. There is a lot to be considered. More important, they have to be systematic. They have to follow the procedures and SOPs established. They have to meet the criteria that have been defined. They have to meet legal requirements. They have to meet international specifications that has been defined. If they fail, then clause 8 is nothing. We don't want to work, and our work is counted like work done is equal to 0. Yes, money has deposited to the prime distributor's account, but with expense, at the expense of a lot of violation. This is not our intention as prime distributors. Me and you, we are all consultant to this company basically. I think we're all together. Let's start now after looking at that perspective without going far away from the same company. We're going to again try to go sub-clause each after one after another to discuss around what does the standard require and what are we looking forward to achieve as part of operation or implementing our requirements in clause 8. So we all understand that clause 8.1 sets the foundation of this clause. It requires the operation planning and control. Excuse me. So it requires planning, implementing, and the control processes with documented evidence that the process don't just exist, but it is properly followed. So we remember on the previous clauses, and Mary just explained to us clause 7 on the documented information and all the issues related to the format and the policies and procedures established for all processes related to the organization. Now, we are comfortable with those. So on this clause, we are not just checking that the process is available, but we're going to make sure that it is there. So as an important tip before I forget, as the implementer of the system, it's very important that you make every SOP, every process, every procedure that I've established, every policy, you read it, you go between the lines, you make sure that whenever there is expectation of any item, any measurable item to be delivered or at any frequency, maybe daily, weekly, monthly, you do it. Otherwise, that is automatic failure of clause 8. We're not just to go and check, my electrical safety procedure is here and is approved by management. That is nonsense for this clause. Yes, we're happy that it's there, clause 8.1, that is very good, but is it implemented? Because the implementation is the real control now we are looking here to manage the risk that is ahead of us. And we want to make sure that we get money, but with clean hands, without violating. So availability of the processes, which again is part of planning, I normally say, this will always set the criteria for us for what we need to implement. So if it is the inspection, always tell the protocol. like we do in daily, weekly, monthly, and this will determine the level of compliance that is expected by the requester, be it the standard or be the client, etc., etc. So at primary distributors, basically, this means we need to have defined criteria for order acceptance, supply approval, receiving inspection, warehousing, and dispatching at minimum, because all these processes will have to be touched. So we go to each of the process. What does it say? What are the deliverables? What are the sign-offs has been established within the procedure, within the process? How often? What are the frequencies that we need to demonstrate that is happening? So we see some of the examples as we continue, but I want you to understand that setting the criteria is everything. It means you know what to implement. And we all understand, we are used to this with the TOR. If someone calls you and tell you, I want to do A, B, C, D, if we are manned enough, if we are learned enough, the first question you ask, what are the TOR for that? Many people won't just agree to do work. Even on a normal job, you have a job description. So the process will set like a criteria, like a plan. We define like what is being expected for you to deliver in that particular process, and which can be verified. So this also covers managing planned changes, reviewing unintended ones, new layout, substitute material, rushed procedure. So when we are talking about managing the planned changes, this is we will understand change management. It featured out in Clause 6 basically when we are considering planning about changes. At this stage on Clause 8, we are looking forward to see on how we are controlling now the changes whenever they happen. And we're all set about whatever is going to come out, which we didn't anticipate. So this crowd is set forward to consider that. Outsourced processes, issues like third-party transport, prime distributors are not owning the vehicles. They have outsourced that one. So in other process-based these have to be still controlled. Remember, outsourcing, it doesn't mean that you don't have a risk. You still have to own the risk. And basically, control doesn't stop at the gate. You have to make sure that you still own. So the key message before we proceed basically is I will also insist about setting the criteria. We are saying if it is not planned, controlled, and evidenced, it is not happening. It is not done. It is not Clause 8 compliant. So it's not the matter of stories. It's not the matter of just plans. It's not the matter of, yes, it was planned, but there was a loophole that created a risk to that control. And again, if we don't have adequate evidence that it was properly controlled and implemented, then this is a big failure as far as this clause is concerned. So operational planning and control basically in the integrated management system on the context of prime distributors, this is what we are looking forward on day-to-day basis as far as the operation is concerned. We are looking forward to every day to encounter issues like operational planning and control, customer requirements. These are some of the key processes that are likely to happen within our company. We expect to be receiving different customer requirements depending on the order that has been put. Then you have procurement controls, supplier controls, receiving inspection, warehousing. We have to manage the inventory, repackaging, labeling. This is have to be part of the process. Have to be covered. Product identification and traceability, because we are talking about a lot of processes. So if you don't have traceability, you end up compromising. And we see some of the examples on how you need to achieve that. Preservation of product, outsourced processes, distribution, without forgetting environmental and OHS control, emergency preparedness, and response. So on day-to-day, this is likely to happen at our company, at prime distributors, and our role is to make sure that we can really evidence that these control are really happening, and we don't have any risk, and everything can be evidenced. So First of all, as I said, the big win from clause 4 to clause 6, having the processes documented for all of this, documented processes, if possible, approved for implementation, is a big win toward us making things done in clause 8. So this is just a sample of the having, when we're saying some of the processes available. Well, this one will set the criteria. I just put some of the few processes belonging to this company. We have the control of non-conforming product process, and then we have the change management process, and this one, maybe, I don't know, yeah, yeah. So these are a number of processes, just as examples. And I tried to put to ensure that I didn't bring just a draft. I just brought a copy that is approved. The approved copy give us authority to implement, give us authority for decision making, give us power for whoever is there to make sure that it is enforced and is also implemented. So these are some of the examples that we are looking forward to have. They're already documented in clause 7.5, but we are looking forward to have them here to go through them and ensure that our criteria that we need to implement are well set. Again, I can just give example for the police that is not here. Maybe in one of the procedure that is there to manage road safety of vehicles related to transportation of prime distributors goods, is maybe they will say all vehicles shall be inspected daily, maybe by the driver, weekly by the fleet supervisor, and monthly by the fleet manager, maybe in conjunction with health and safety manager. So if I'm just using that example, maybe this is one of the criteria set in one of the processes. So what we are looking forward to see in clause 8, we want to see all those daily inspections happening because it was planned. We want to see all those weekly inspections happening because it was planned. We want to see all those monthly inspections happening. And there can be evidence enough with a couple of evidence that can suffice the requirement of objective evidence for the auditor to be honest. So this is an example of when we are saying operational plan and control. If you fail to plan, if you didn't take perspective, what are you implementing? You're going to fail. If you are unsure that I have the documented process for this particular process, you better go back and design and develop a process and make sure that it's reviewed, aligned, and communicated instead of just jumping around the bush. You will not meet what the standard require. Because if you plan it properly, it's very easy for you to start implementing. Okay, now let us start going to navigate into prime distributors example as part of operational planning and control. So we tried to sample different areas where we can encounter issues that need to be happening as evidence and things during operation. So issues like seasonal peak planning. So we're expecting issues like shift and induction criteria set before the November and December surge, because we understand that will be the peak month. We don't want to lose customers, don't want to lose money. So it won't come as a surprise. So as part of the induction criteria, as part of preparation, we are expecting to have the criteria set. What are we going to do? Because we know November will come, is just a few months ahead of us. Another example is the change control log. If the new racking layout signed off before staff used it, we need to make sure that these changes has been documented when the new rack was being introduced. So we're not just taking for granted any extension, any change from the original state that we have to be taken into account. And also the contracted maintenance, the forklift service schedule, we expect to be documented and followed because it was stated and it's gonna be used. So we want to see that we have the schedule running and the schedule is being followed properly. If we said we need to do maybe monthly service by the user, then quarterly service according to the manufacturer recommendation, or maybe annual inspection according to the legal requirement, We're going to see that happening because we already planned it by considering in the previous clauses that this is part of the requirement. Now here we are just make sure that it's really happening. And also another example is risk reviews. Like we already said, we have the risk planned. We want to ensure that if there is a frequency set is now really implemented. If the process is not saying how often we're going to review our risks, our exposure, then that is vague and is very difficult for us to implement and pass. So if at minimum we have defined the criteria or the frequency, this looks proactive and is better for anyone to start now tracking and get things done within the defined frequency of time. So the practical note here is basically ISO 9001, clause 8.1 requires documented evidence that processes ran as planned. Auditors expect to see it, not just to hear about it. Don't say, we have already aligned in the meeting. We don't want to hear those languages. We want to see it happening. You planned it, it was done. So getting things done as planned, getting things well defined, just verifying that the criteria is practical. If it's not practical, that is still your procedure. And revisit and review it, make it friendly. I always say, having a policy or procedure that you can't enforce is nothing. You better not have it. Doesn't mean anything. That's why if we are a good process person, some people are not fan of long pages document, copy paste templates, which you don't own it, you don't know how to implement. You better have a 3-page document, even a 2 pages document, even 4 pages document that you can really sure you can implement. We don't want surprises that you can see not understand some of the things that were said because you are in the stage of doing, you're in the stage of doing, getting things done, but in the right way. I have a quick check here. I think Paul and Joanna would assist me to see the responses. We want to go around this simple question and you type your answers. Prime distributors warehousing team skips formal receiving checks because everyone knows how it is done. Is this acceptable under clause 8.1? A, yes, as long as products are not damaged. B, no operational control requires documented criteria, no informal practice. C, yes, documented criteria are not only required for such processes. D, no, but only because the warehouse is a QHSC risk area. I hope we have started receiving the responses, Joanne and Paul.
Yes, we have very clever people in this class, Mr.
Wow.
Nashon. Yeah, we have everyone typing in B. I do not see any other answer. Yes, these are
So
coming
everyone
in.
is saying B.
B. Yes, we have about 20 plus Bs here.
Oh, that's great then. And then who am I to reject their answers? So the answer is B, basically. So clause 8, guys, you can clap your hand, clap hands and congratulate you on your end. At least you are understanding and what is happening. So basically, this clause requires properly defined criteria for how processes run and how product service are accepted, not under documented tribal knowledge. We are not the issue of belief. It have to be properly defined, regardless of the experience. So every evidence to expect here, we expect to have a documented receiving inspection procedure without being forgotten, a checklist, and a completed record showing it was followed. Common non-conformity that you can encounter in this situation, basically the process exists only if people heads. So different staff apply different standards depending on the auditor, but this is like non-conformity, and you cannot avoid it because we want it to be evidenced, not in your mind. So The key message you want to learn here, everyone, basically, is document how the process should run before you audit how well it is running. So if you document it, you're adding a lot of confidence to yourself and also to the auditor and also to the system itself. Okay. Let us go to another clause, and this is 8.1. And in the OHS standard, basically it is 8.1 and 8.2. We have tried to combine some of the key expectations and requirement on 8.1 and 8.2 on the environment and the OHS. The rest was more of environmental standard. The clause 8.1, it is requiring control of significant environmental aspects. Waste segregation. The key word here, team, is control. Remember in clause 6.1, it was more of planning, setting the criteria, developing environmental impact register, which is part of planning. Here we are no longer planning. We already planned. We don't know the aspects. We are now looking forward on how we are controlling, on how the plan is really working. Issues like waste segregation, spill containment, utility use, how often are we use, how is our graph going in terms of water, water bills, electricity bills, fuel use, paper in the office, and other utilities. So this is really live of tracking. Again, we expect in one of the process to have set the criteria of checking or recording by means of documenting and having it evidenced, whether weekly, monthly, quarterly, depending on the process of your organization. On the occupational accept clause 8.12, basically here we're looking forward on how we apply the hierarchy of control. It was considered as part of the consideration the previous clauses. Here we are now re-looking on how you were recommending the controls in the real scenario. Whenever we see some of the risk assessment conducted, we directly go to the column, we directly go to see, to read, to see how the control measures were established. How are you really considering the hierarchy of control? Is it like in every risk assessment you do, in any level, maybe generic risk assessment or project specific, or the continuous one, which is like more elementary at the ground level, like the field level risk assessment, any level of risk assessment? If I go to the control mitigation that you put against the identified and evaluated risk, am I going to meet the issue like PPE and the training only? Or I'm meeting the tangible and the real strong controls that is aiming at prevention, like elimination and substitution and engineering at least, rather than going straight to the PPE and administrative controls, which again, we can agree that you can see combine the controls, but the effectiveness, we all understand that starts from top to down. So in clause 8, you are looking forward to deep dive to see how you really used the hierarchy of control in determining the mitigation measures, because this was part of your risk assessment as part of planning in clause 6. So basically, both of these standards, they require that the controls are maintained, they are communicated to workers and contractors, and updated when work activities change. So you plan them. I want to get comfortable that it is really implemented. So the risk all the risk assessment of prime disputers, ranging from warehouse, road transportation, labeling and packaging, all processes that would contribute to some risk in the organization, whether environmental or OHS, we are expecting to have really communicated and really implemented, and they're up to date. This is one of the things that you don't have to miss when we are really checking that this clause is fitting the requirement. Clause 8.2, and basically, which is an equivalent of EMS requirement, requires emergency response plan, not just having it, but having it tested periodically. depending on the frequency that you have just defined in your procedure or in your plan. Not just field. Would you want to make sure that at least you have performed? Remember, if it is not tested, we are just counting surprises in case of an emergency. So we understand some of the tests on OHS. You'll get a lot of scenarios in terms of testing. We normally get some challenges of getting some really scenario of testing environmental management plans. For example, you want to test the oil leakage or spill leakage, leakage of some of the diesel storage tanks, and the program we all understand no management will approve for just a test drill simulation that you want to lose some liters of fuel out on the ground just because you are doing testing. But you still have a range of doing it because some of the storage tanks, we understand they have been stored with detectors and alarm system that will notify, and everyone will know that there is a potential leakage, and you can always use different scenario like that one to always test. But don't come with an excuse that, okay, I wanted to do testing on some of the environmental parameters, and then I failed to get approval because there was cost implication. That is too late, my friend. That means you failed to plan in the previous clauses. So you need to have to be clear, say in your emergency plan or procedure, what are your lead like scenarios, and if you are to test, how are you going to do it? And what we are looking here to see is at least you have done a number of tests expected as a criteria set. So again, another key takeaway message I want you guys to take around this area is a control that only exists on paper protects no one. Verify it on the warehouse floor, go out, see how it is happening, regardless how beautiful it is, how narrated it is in terms of the document. If it is not done, it is not happening. And then this is a non-conformity according to the standard. Okay, I might go into one of the example again as part of looking forward on how our company, our client, who is we are consultants. So claim disputers bring us money basically. So we are the consultant to claim disputers. So we want to see on how they are going to really pass this 8.1 and 8.2 in terms of OHS and the environmental. So issues like spill kit stations, are they really happening? We want to see kits at every packaging point, checked monthly, and they're in order. We want to see PPE compliance checks done, depending on the criteria set. Maybe daily walk through confirm that gloves, goggles are worn. Hierarchy for control in action, not just in papers. And I said, not just going through the risk assessment. Now, this is really a practice. I walk out through the warehouse. I want to see the pallet jacks replacing the manual lifting on the floor. And at least I will consider that you have considered the hierarchy of control in establishing the control measure to identify the risk. And this is a very good. And also at the assembly point, want to see the testing done each quarter. Quarter drill done and is documented. Yeah, then at least we can evidence that. Things to note here, team, before we move. Basically, this clause, sub-clause requires emergency response plan to be periodically tested. I can't wait to emphasize this. I know most of the people do miss it, and some of you, they do forge because they know the audit is coming. There are things that is very difficult to backdate. If it is the exercise that was supposed to be organized in June, and the audit is going to happen in July, if you missed it, you missed it. So most of the people that they normally do, they normally cook the data, they normally forge the reports. Again, I can still get evidence that this was properly done or was not done, was just a documentation. Any auditor would know how to to really validate whatever evidence provided, whether it's adequate enough to be called that as objective evidence or not. But what really matters is to plan and get the test done. That's all. Okay, I hope we're still together. Let's move to clause 8.2 combined to clause 8.4. So basically, we already moving from order to supply now. We are already talking about matching the customer requirement, procurement not failing us not to meet what the customer require, and how we are going to control the supplier who's going to deliver whatever we are supposed to have at hand, and should the emergency happen, how ready are we? So this is a clause which is looking forward also to check around on how we are really set on this. So clause 8.2 requires determining, reviewing customer requirement before an order is confirmed, specific quantity, packaging, timeline, and as we said, but 8.4 requires controlling external provided products and services. So, because prime distributors have outsourced some of the activities, maybe driving and supply of some of the material, we need to make sure that our supply chain manager is really having a proper defined criteria for evaluating, not just evaluating, even selection, evaluating the supplier against the defined criteria. And if we want to be compliant with the new ISO standard of the version of 2026, we understand that we want to go just focusing on the prices, but criteria, the quality, defined criteria will be the major focus and mandatory, without forgetting the delivery timelines, compliance. Purchase order specify requirements. We have seen people receiving the POs which are vague, and that makes the delivery fail, and that's where most of the conflicting happening between the supplier and the customer. So it is advised that whenever you are giving the PO to the supplier, and this is the key message to the prime distributors procurement manager, to ensure that we have a few bullet points on the PO that is going to the supplier, and this just to ensure that we have control of whatever going to be brought to our hands for verification. So issues like incoming suppliers have to also be verified against them before we use them or before we sell. Outsourced transport and repackaging are also externally provided processes here. And what we are looking forward to is we need to make sure that they match the risk that they carry. We have proper assessment that are done. We are looking forward to see the risk assessment developed. Is really covering adequate activities related to driving and the risk related to driving, issues like fatigue, journey planning, speeding, driver competence, etc., etc. So what we are looking forward to see here is whenever we have the vehicle that going to be used during the process of getting the materials, we are just confirming that inspection has been done, everything has been checked okay. So again, re-emphasis on setting some of the criteria, emphasis on managing external provided services, emphasis on proper selection and the proper evaluation of the vendors, and emphasis against clear risk that is managing all outsourced activities. So the message I want you guys to take again on this part is a supplier mistake is still your non-conformity if you never defined what you expected. So they will always deliver what you told them to. That's why initially I said, if you fail to plan it, if the criteria is vague, is not specific enough, it means the supplier won't deliver to the level or to the standard that you are comfortable with. So the good advice that I would give to everyone is to make sure that you are very keen in terms of setting the scope, the criteria, and the last but not least, without forgetting, the last PO that is going to the the supplier is clearly defining what really prime distributor want on a particular product to be supplied. So before I move out from this clause, I thought it's also good to give an example of one of the emergency preparedness drill record from the prime distributors. And this was done basically last month. And you can see the type of the drill that we have, and you can see the dates that we have and the location where we carried which, and we can see the number of participants that were involved in those drills, and at least some of the findings and the corrective action that emanated from the identified findings or observation as a result of the exercise. So these are the things we are looking forward to find really happening and really exactly available as valid records for verification for the auditor, and just bring the confidence that the system is up and running. I have another knowledge check question on emergency response. John again and Paul, you will assist me to check. This is the question, team. A written spill response plan sits in the QHSSC office, but staff have never practiced it. Does this meet emergency preparedness requirements? Need the answer among the
answers B.
Sorry?
Currently, we have answers B.
Okay.
Yes, I see B, I see B. B, B, B. Yes, so all of them have said B. That no, the organization must periodically test its emergency response capability, not just document it.
Yeah. As usual, this is a smart class, and thank you very much for your responses. So the answer is B, as you guys said. So basically, just to emphasize and to cement on this, both clause 8.2 and both of the standards, basically they require emergency arrangement to be established, implemented, and periodically tested. The evidence expected is a documented emergency response procedure, drill test records, and review after each of the tests or incident that have happened. If you don't do it, this is the common nonconformity that is likely to happen. For example, a plan that is existing but was never tested, I said that, saw the gap surface only during a real emergency. So this is one of the most of the mistake many people do. Prime distributors own near miss. This was the previous case. Show that how fast a tested a walk to the floor control closes a real gap. So issues like near misses, this can also be evidenced enough and be used. And we leave the issue of just having it planned. So again, remember, an untested emergency plan is a hypothesis. It's not relevant, is a total failure in clause 8, not a control. Test it before you need it. This is very, very important. Okay, team, we move to clause 8. To be 100%, as I said in the beginning, to our customer prime distributor, but because they're not involved in direct designing in some of the products that they provide to their customer, but some of the areas we see how they also cover, and this clause might be related. So clause 8.3 applies to where this company basically would be in the situation of designing some new, not only when manufacturing from the scratch. So this will be totally, and there will be a full audit for them. So it covers developing private label packaging formulations, on this context, new kitting configuration, and new deposit service offering. So design inputs, outputs, and the changes are reviewed and controlled before anything reaches a customer. So it means they're already working on the pre-designs. The good example is in some of the organizations. I'll give an example of construction company. Depending on the client, one of the client will tell you, "I want you to build this story building. And because you are qualified contractor, registered the contractor, a certified contractor engineer registered by the whatever engineering board, the contractors board, what I want you is to provide me design for approval and consideration. So now that will be part of the scope of the supplier to consider designing. In other cases, most of the suppliers or contractors, they just receive a pre-designed drawing, they just need to implement. So it all depends on how far you are involved in designing. So as I said, the standard doesn't only focus on design, also development. So that's why you see some of the areas on prime dispute are still touched. So a new prime brand surface cleaner blend is trialed and signed off before it reaches to a customer shelf. Those are the things also we might need to consider. So even a distributor designs a new blend kit or service still needs planned inputs, review, and a sign-off before launch. Though we are not involved from the beginning, but these are the key considerations that we might not need to leave aside as a supplier to our client. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to again navigate through another example that is all about checking and increasing our awareness, checking on increasing our competence in terms of implementing and really do the work through these clouds around clouds 8.2 and 8.4. I think I mentioned this in some of the areas, but we're looking check to see into like order confirmation, checklist, the specification, the quantity, the packaging, date confirmed before release. A look into those is a good example that you are already in control. Approved supplier lists as part of procurement, as part of supply chain management. We don't want to find a supplier that is not vetted, that didn't pass the requirement, being part of the supplier that were approved. Now, I understand this process is dependent with other company processes embedded to the code of conduct of the particular company. If issues like ethics and compliance, in the way to understand that if this also fails, it's also going to fail. In most of the cases, we normally fail to meet the requirement where we lose the integrity and ethics during procurement. For example, someone is, because of conflict of 10%, is forcing particular supplier X to be selected to get the order, whereas in fact is not even vetted, is not passing the requirement established by the procedure of the client in this context, the distributor, and is not even meeting the requirement. So because of other factors, which probably as an auditor can be beyond your control, this is the internal issue. We are looking forward to see vendor who is properly evaluated is available in the what we call ASL. Now, we normally use ASL, approved supplier list, as the general term that would apply to any company. But with the modern world, we understand from 8 different companies ranging from corporate all the way to SMEs, we have developed a lot of systems and tools to manage our vendors. Some of you would call vendor database, others will call procurement database, others will call contractors or vendor master list, whatever you call it, whether it's digital, online, or it's normal Excel, I don't care. What matters, whoever is in the list have passed the requirement. This is very, very important. You are likely to fail if you don't have formal supplier evaluation process well implemented. If we are missing supplier audits, if we are missing supplier evaluations, if we are not clearly enough to ensure that the supplier are meeting whatever you've said, this is a big failure in this context. And also where we have defined supplier evaluation, depending on the criteria or the frequency set made annually or quarterly, we want to see this happening. And also PO clause requires to set some of the things like we need the material safety data sheet available as a requirement. You will remember these people are dealing with chemicals cleaning detergents, etc. So safety data sheet are kind of key requirements. So if that is mentioned as part of the PO, that is even lovely, because whoever is receiving inspection is very easy to validate against whatever was defined in the PO. So ladies and gentlemen, again, I argue you to always remember that this clause required full supplier control to match the risk that is being defined. Chemical supplier need to have tighter control than stationary supplier. Yes, madam.
Yes. Just a question came in. One is asking, is the supplier audit required, or is the annual supplier performance sufficient? Like, is it a requirement to have the audit, or the annual supplier performance can be sufficient?
So basically, the standard says supplier evaluation. So now the way you structure your evaluation, again, that will come in the previous clauses where you have planning. So basically, or where you set the criteria by means of developing the supply evaluation process. So it will depend on how much you want them to align to your requirement. So some of the organized, they are going further to, apart from just annual evaluation, they're going to audit. Some of them are not even just quarterly audit or semi-annual audit. They are going even to monthly audit. Okay, I will agree that will depend on the our risk rating of that supplier and the scope of it that they're undertaking. If they are high risk and you need much attention to their operation, probably that will trigger to high and tight frequency of auditing to them. So the answer here will be like, this will depend on what you have defined based on your SOP developed internally, and after basically considering the risk rating and the scope of work that supplier is undertaking. Right? Okay. Good to go. So maybe before we take a break, I thought it's good to share some of the, and again, this is just one example of the beyond the warehouse, things like outsourced processes in the distribution. What are the likely pitfalls and the best practice that we might encounter in the context of our friend prime distributor? So the common pitfalls that we are going to encounter, basically third-party transporters, they are normally booked on price alone with no review of their safety or handling practice. This is common to many organizations, and especially if you are not included as the QHSC personnel, you are not included in the tender process. Be sure that price is going to be the first priority. And again, this will depend on the culture of the organization in terms of QHSC maturity. But if your culture is a little bit good, regardless, you are not there, you are there, the price will not be the factor alone. But again, as I said, as a basic practice, we have to look into what the new standard of 2026 have said on the quality management standard, whether we need to go beyond the pricing. And pricing can be misleading. There is one quotation that is always saying, cheap is always expensive. I've been speaking to different procurement managers when we are discussing around compliance versus pricing when you're onboarding the vendors. It is really realistic. You find the vendor who is charging higher, if you deep dive around compliance, they are really good. They can't charge low if they are paying their licenses, they are meeting all legal requirements, they are following all our processes, they are even ISO certified. They need to make sure that they maintain that rapport and they maintain the requirements of whoever authority that certified them, and they can't make them cheap. So this is a clarity we need to bring to the organization in case they are still struggling to think saving is a key priority. We don't want to compromise the quality. We don't want to kill the people. We don't want to bring the impact of the environment just because we focus on the price. No agreement defined on how outsourced the packaging or transportation work would be verified before goods leave the warehouse. This is one of the big mistakes again. And remember, this makes your SLA totally fail. You don't know what you are checking when it leaves the procurement, the warehouse. So this is a common pitfall that is always encountered. And from experience as well, distribution of performance on time, damage-free delivery is not measured or reported. And in terms of best practice, basically, we are looking forward to everyone start considering, especially on prime dispute example, transport partners are evaluated against defined criteria, safety record, vehicle inspection, insurance, reliability, etc. Number two, basically, as part of the best practice, outsourced work is covered by clear agreement and outputs are verified against accepted criteria before we dispatch anything from the warehouse. Distribution KPI, here we mean like on delivery time, damage rate, compliance clearly defined, and they are really tracked as part of the operational control. So, as I said, we learn from others. This is some of the things we can learn from some of the mistakes that are likely to happen, and we focus on the best practice to see how best we can leverage around making sure that we will do whatever the clouds expect us to do. Yeah, maybe before I proceed, Joanna, what do you think? I think we're almost halfway. I was considering before I finish the rest of the clauses, we'll get a break and maybe it might be an opportunity to get more questions. I know how you moderate this, but we can take a break and then we'll proceed. I don't want to load a lot of information. Some people might have started sleeping.
Yes.
Welcome.
However, we
Joanna.
already had a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can just only tackle
Yeah,
that
I can take
question.
it.
Then we head for that.
Yep.
Yeah, we had the one Robert asking under emergency response preparedness, clause 8.2. There is an upcoming standard called NFPA 704. Kindly talk about it. Is it punishable if it's not implemented?
Okay, I think we'll touch base that when we come back.
All right. That is fine.
Jonah, there was
Yes,
one question
Carol.
for Nashon. Maybe, Nashon, do you mind answering this one from
No worries, no
clause
worries, no worries.
6? There is one from clause 6, which was from Eliab. How is planning of change different from management of change under 8.1.3? You mentioned about 8.1, and this question came on Tuesday. I believe that was when Dennis was talking about management of change. So I kept this for you. How is planning of change different from management change in 8.1?
Okay, I think I touched a little bit in the beginning. I can also give an overview here. However, I have a slide to cover when we come back. But in summary, in clause 6, basically, we're looking forward on how you plan for changes. If changes happen, how do you plan? How you gonna manage? So it's more about considering and putting scenarios of some of the plans on that are likely to happen in different operational areas. So that consideration make it liable to be part of the planning. When you come to clause 8, when you are looking forward to discuss the same, is all about controlling the change. So clause 6 is all about planning, considering what to do when the change happens. Now, clause 8 is all about how are you now controlling the change if it happens. So you will see the criteria defined here is really telling us 1, 2, 3 what to do, how often, what should be the process, and if there were changes that were made, do we still have those criteria implemented? And we'll see some of the examples. I have a clear slide on this, but the clear difference is that is on basically part of planning, and here now you are already implementing a change is already happening, you have to demonstrate that it is properly controlled without missing the criteria set in the previous clause. Right?
That is just perfect. Mr. Nashon, you can go for your coffee. I have mine right here. Joanna, I don't know if you have your coffee. It is really time to work.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Enjoy your break. We begin at 7:32. We shall see Mr. Nashon at 7:42.
Sure.
So, Joanna, I don't know if Eliab got that. I don't know if Eliab, if you're in the chat, you could just say a hi or a thumbs up if it's okay, or you can type right in if it wasn't clear. But I also see a couple of answers, comments coming in. I think we shall keep.
Yes, I also see some questions coming in. Keep those questions coming in. Our facilitator is going to be able to address them once he's right back.
All right. So we
So,
have
Paul,
a
what do you
contribution
have
from
for
Paul
us today for our break?
Today I have myself. I'm going to I'm going to be the break. I actually am seeing a comment from my namesake here. He contributes to the planning of change, which is very interesting. We can actually have a discussion about this. So he says planning of change is primarily before implementation, whereas management of change is before, during, and after implementation. Very interesting point of view. What do you think, Joanna?
Yeah, I think so because, before you get to implement, you get to plan before and make sure that you all have these systems in place. Then during, for example, you could have the permit to work systems aligned and all that. Then you can be able to have the whole implementation and see that, yes, we are doing this work, but there may be some synapse in between. So we can basically see how to manage this change. So that's a nice catch from Paul, your namesake.
Yeah, surely. And Emis has an addition exactly what you are talking about. He thought it best to help with a practical example. And you mentioned about the permit. So with that explanation from Paul, that means planning our permit could be having the permit work system, drafting documentation. I remember Dennis took us through how to get the signatories and all that. And then when you come now to the actual managing of the change, you're having your supervisors having those permits signed. So that is all part of the change. And we have also...
I also see commented and see Eliad has also appreciated that his question has been well explained and he's satisfied.
Eliab, we expect another question. We have a comment up just from Engineer Ramadani, who says yes. So, Engineer, you're welcome to the session. I hope this is not your first, but if it is, we are glad to have you. He thanks us for the explanation of the ISO Clause 8, including the very good examples. From his side, he would like to share his experience regarding his clause, especially when developing an ISO management system. In many cases, developers or implementers tend to exclude subclause 8.3 in order to avoid complications, especially when developing an ISO management system for a company that provides service or a service provider. For those whose clause documents are far, 8.3 is the management change. Therefore, it is very important to understand the circumstances and criteria that can help determine what clause 8.3 should not be excluded. Very interesting perspective, engineer. Don't you think so, Joanna?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like Nashon also told us, indeed, cheap is expensive. So you'd rather include all the clauses and be able to get that quality top-notch management system than actually leave some, because in between everything, everyone has to have some design and development. You cannot run our management of change because in and out, we keep dealing with different things day in and day out. So we can't guarantee that it will go as planned.
Other than that, Miss Joanna, are we ready to have Mr. Nashon back with us?
Yes.
I'm here, sir. Thank you very much. My coffee was good. I hope yours was too.
Be back.
Yeah, maybe I think I took the one on the operational changes, management of change. I think I covered a little bit, and as I said, I think I have a slide on it. I may go to the NFPA 704 a little bit. So yes, we understand there have been a lot of upgrade in terms of the international standards coming, and it is amazing in terms of the way they have established the color codes applicable to managing fire safety and the chemical safety. But in terms of the real question, like how is it going to impact us, depending on which country are you? But in many cases, all of our countries, basically, if I may take Tanzania specific, we all have our local legislations with regard fire protection, the chemicals and the rest. Also open it to adoption and the compliance to the international standards. We still have the local ones really proceeding, and probably guess the same is the case for the rest of the countries. So I think it will impact you until when your country has really formally adopted it and is considering it as a mandatory requirement. Otherwise, as a consultant and as a practitioner, the advice that I could give you is not to ignore, is to consider it as one of the eminent, important international best practice that might need to be considered and implemented around your controls that you already have in place, so that whenever it becomes a requirement, you are still on track. Just like the way we are doing ISO certification, we don't have all companies certified by ISO, maybe in particular country, but it is an international requirement. Is a good thing to have, but we might say, okay, every company must have it, and then there is a penalty of not having. We haven't reached it to that level, but it's a very good practice to start considering. Until when your country have adopted it as a requirement, then that will be mandatory, and you can be charged for non-compliance. Thank you very much. So let's go to the next. We were discussing around some of the common pitfalls and the best practice that we might consider, without leaving our company who is prime dispute as an example. In this example, we want again to stress around the outsourced processes and distribution as part of the control. And this is the thing that we might need to again look into. And this was part of the cloud. As I said, most part of this presentation is to deep dive into different examples from different angles, to be honest, to see how really we can still cover everything that is done and controlled properly. So another example is around the transporter scorecard. So we expect the issue like partners scored quarterly on delivery and the damage rate, and this have to be managed by someone else to ensure that there is continuous monitoring, and we can tell because we already defined the KPI. Site access control. So for subcontractors, they induct and sign safety agreement first as they enter. This is one of the important control. We want to have end-to-end in case of an emergency, as part of the awareness, which was already spoken before. So access control for the visitors, for the suppliers, for the customers who are also entering at our premises, that have to be part of the check as part of the outsourced process. We don't want it to get into an emergency situation and then we go to the roll call. We cannot, we then came to realize that we have some visitors who were never accounted for, and also they were not inducted, and maybe they got impacted as a result of an emergency situation because they lacked the clear instruction that could have given just at the entrance gate when they came. So all of these things are things to control around the outsourcing process, because we're not operating in silos, because we're engaging outside people. They will have to bring their vehicles, their personnel to our premises. So those are the things to check. And also another example would be outsourced packaging audit. External partners audited it to the same labeling rules. This is the second eye, just to check our packaging if it is properly done. And why audit for this category? Because we understand that if basically packaging is always all about is what we are doing, and they can also brand ourselves. So if we outsourced it, we need to make sure that we have full control. So the audit of this process will not be negotiable because we want to make sure that we don't ruin our brand as prime distributors. Another example is delivery check. We just count and confirm at the yard whatever has been delivered versus whatever that was ordered is real tallying. This can be done by different documentation. All the things I'm saying here, we need to have documented as evidence, and they can be evidenced enough, and they have a clear record to demonstrate that they will really happen and they have a full control. So as a practical note, remember clause 8.1, 4.3 require OHS risk from outsourcing. So arrangements meet legal and OHS requirement because you are still accountable, you are still the owner of the risk. Okay, I mentioned about managing the suppliers, and this is an example of very simple ASL. I know you still make it friendly to your feet or to the nature of organization, but at minimum, we're looking forward at least whoever gets a PO or an order to supply materials for prime distributors is in this database, is in this list where we have find the name of supplier, the category that they provide of the service or product they supply to us, and when was the last they were evaluated, because we count evaluation as key. And when we done evaluation, according to the defined criteria, and what the last score. So there was other intermediate audit between the year. We see how this is calibrated around the final score rating, but we are able to say this supplier is compliant, non-compliant, or provisional at particular level. In some of the organization, I remember to work with an organization where that was linked with the PO release. So all the PO release process will proceed, but before the procurement manager click the button to release the PO, it will cross-check in the system whether that vendor is registered in ASL. So if he is not registered in ASL, no PO will be released. But if that is linked to the PO system, then that will be very good and effective. So I want to say you can customize this ASL to the level that you want. For example, some of the organization may even want to add the risk rating, both financial risk rating and HSEQ risk rating. You understand these are two different risks. A supplier may be high risk on finance, but low risk on probably HSE because they are just printing notebook for us. They're just printing stickers for our products. So, and the printing is done at their premises. But because of the volume of the printing that we are doing in a year, like their contract is very expensive and is of high budget compared to the rest of the minor suppliers who just come and do high risk activities in terms of OHS, but they are not that much expensive in terms of the budget. So that's we normally like to separate between QHSE risk rating and the financial risk rating. The last column is very important, and again, depending on the type of wording you want to use, if you say approved, conditional, or under review, some of people may put even RAG status by means of red, green, and amber, which each color will mean that they are compliant, they are provisional, or they are not compliant, and all linked to the scores that is matching to whatever was said in the process as a defined criteria. So I want to see, and we want even to be confident that in the past 3 months, if we are to sample some of the procurement that were done, we are able to meet 100% of the vendors who were given work. They are part of this list. If they are not part of this list, and then that is a major exit. So we are looking forward to see how this is maintained so that we are sure whoever we work with, we have done a couple of KYC, and we are adequate enough to know how much they comply to our requirement, local legal requirement, and also international requirement, just to make sure that we are covered. They don't want to lose any point to lose, as we make our customer happy. Okay. Let's go around to another example, and this will be on the batch checking and the verification in the warehouse. And this is all about non-conforming chemical drum. We have a scenario where a regular supplier deliver a batch of industrial detergent to prime distributors warehouse, and the delivery note matches the purchase order, kila kitu kiko sawa, everything is okay. So the receiving clerk, under pressure to clear the dock before the close, it skipped the batch documentation check and moved the drum straight to the general storage. So 2 weeks later, only to realize that a customer complaint revealed that the batch arrived without its required safety data sheet and a different concentration than specified, which triggered a recall from 3 customer sites. So keynotes for this scenario as a summary, you can see the element of dock pressure that made the receiving clerk moving drums fast to clear the truck, and this brought a risk of missing and creating the mismatch of the documentation during checking of the or verification of the material safety data sheet. The way I understand the risk here is we're also missing the wrong concentration. If we have a material labeled wrong SDS, this is a very serious issue in terms of OHS, in terms of fire and the rest of the risk, and even to the customer satisfaction. So if no SDS was sent to general storage instead of quarantine, this is also another issue that we might need to take into account. So those are the things that might happen as part of the operation as the life goes on around prime disputers. So how do we handle those kind of situations? So you check doc first, and this is what basically was supposed to be done. So the documents, as part of the delivery of handling the material that is passing through the warehouse, document check, not just document check, careful and thorough document check is done. Issues like delivery note, the PO, safety are all matching before unloading. We understand we are a human being, and some of the systems are not automated. The management system, which is certified and meeting the ISO standard, will not take that excuse. You better add resources to ensure that the control is effectively managed, and that's why in Clause 7 we want to ensure that the organization have adequate resources to manage the requirement of the standard in a particular management system. So whether you are tired, you forgot to check is not an excuse. This requires that everything is properly checked and can be evidenced to avoid the risks that I've just said. Verify specification, concentration in batch, number confirmed, and if you find some of the missing or some of the which doesn't pass, you can put them to quarantine. Blue drums go to yellow, hot, and until QA signs off. So it's a matter of settle and realigning a well-organized chain of custody that will ensure that you don't skip anything. So no rush, doc is organized, PP is on, process is followed, no one is in a hurry. Then you tend to you become in a position of avoiding those mismatches instant, which is bring a lot of operational failure. And from this scenario is receiving inspection is a control point. Receiving inspection is a control point, not a formality. Skipping it under time pressure, move the risk downstream to the customer. I have one example basically. I remember to have audited one of the supplier, and he was really at the meeting where we basically encountered one of the failure of the receiving inspection that was not done, and they ended up costing them much. They were building an infrastructure, basically it was a telecom infrastructure, and they were supposed to supply some of the materials that is meeting particular client specifications. So their procurement did their part, and somehow, this receiving inspection failed at a particular point. So they purchased And because of the rush and the pressure that was coming to the client, they just rushed the material to the site without doing this receiving inspection. And the supervisor engineer was implementing. They never had the control of verifying that. So they just come and use the material to store, only to realize after the tower was already up and the material was substandard, it have to cost them to decommission, to break down the entire infrastructure. Remember, you are building a 50-meter tower. You're already halfway, about 20 meter. On the ground, everything is set. The concrete is set. The foundation is set. Everything is well constructed. You have to demolish everything and start from the scratch. So it was expensive and costly to the supplier. And this was because they just missed the receiving inspection. Someone was supposed to do inspection after receiving the material that were supplied after procurement. So regardless of the reasons that you might have, we understand there is a pressure that may come from the client, which might also originate from the government, of which I don't know, the control is still questionable, but we have no excuse about compliance. Wherever regardless the pressure is coming, we have to make sure that we stand by the requirement and ensure that whatever step is ticked okay and the control is done to avoid the risk that we might to encounter on the business side from the people, safety, and as well as the environment. Let us cover on 8.5, which is the warehousing inventory product integrity, which is part basically of controlling products around the supplier. So this clause requires controlled conditions like working instructions, suitable infrastructure, monitoring and defined acceptance criteria for monitoring all activities around warehousing inventory and the product integrity that is being delivered. So now, at the prime dispute as warehousing conditions, so issues like inventory accuracy, packaging into customer quantities and customer level, these are very, very key and important to be controlled. And this is to ensure that we have full control of what is being expected. Identification and traceability, which is 8.5.2, which means basically every packaged unit is properly traced to its original batch, vital for recalls, and that is according to the last scenario I said, where we don't want to be in the issue of we missed an important factor or an important control during the process. So all this within the chain of custody will ensure that we have the full traceability. Preservation as well, this basically cover the correct storage. We understand the environmental factors and other geographical factors that might affect our product. We don't want to ensure that we have the material that came and took long time and maybe was impacted, or we get complaints from the customer. So the FIFO to see which is basically first in, first out, will have to be encouraged to prevent damage or expiry of some of the product. So all those control would have to be end to end as part of traceability and ensure that the inventory is properly managed. Let me give us one example as we add our knowledge and understanding about the product integrity. So examples like bin location labeling, we want to see the pallet locations correct and match to the inventory so that we don't have to miss, we don't have to contradict and mix things. FIFO in practice, first in, first out, just to avoid the expiry again. And more important to this, we are saying it have to be documented as a set criteria, and odd badges picked first, and we have a defined monthly or weekly audit that is done to ensure that is happening. Cycle counting is another example. We sample SKUs counted weekly, reconciled against the records, etc., etc. Quarantine separated and clearly marked for those which didn't pack or we need to confirm something. So something to note before we leave here, Basically, this clause requires preservation of outputs that will ensure that identification, handling, packaging, not just storage condition, to ensure that we don't lose any expected quality time of the delivery of the material from the warehouse. So inventory is very key. And this is an example of receiving inspection checklist that we might need to consider. And this is basically the item that you have to define. What are you checking? So you have a checking item. What do you want? And you have to say it has passed or not. Now, where do you get the word pass? It means you already have the defined criteria that you are matching the physical material in your hand against what was defined. These are records. These records are very important, as I said. Otherwise, you might ending up receiving the material that have expired, or they're missing the defined criteria. And for that case, we are sure our customer won't be happy anyhow. Another example, let us see around the mislabeled repack. So prime distributors repackages backflow cleaner into a smaller customer specific containers. Basically, customer will say, I want in this form, and we have to do that. Now, during a busy week, a temporary worker labels a batch using template from a similar batch, different product. So he end up mixing up and isn't caught before dispatch to 2 hospitals. Because each repackaged unit was linked to its original batch and the production date in the inventory system, the warehouse team identified and they recall the exact 40 units were affected within 2 hours. Instead of guessing at the entire week output, just by missing the template during labeling. So this is what we are trying to capture from the scenario. So, and basically, we all learn from mistake, but we are insisting that on the verification of product, we expect that you need to match, they are supposed to match the backdrum to work order. So blue flow container A, you clearly label it, and you scan the batch, use handheld scanner to link each small bottle to original batch production date in the system. And then you can use 2-person label check just for another second die to confirm. We are human being. Worker 1 applies label, the worker 2 confirm label template against the product before you seal it. And that gives you confidence before you release it. And then you approve this dispatch, which shows that green only will have to pass. And this, once they pass, they are released. So what you are learning here is strong identification and traceability. It turns a potential 5-day company-wide recall into 2-hour targeted correction. So we are human beings. Mistake can happen, errors can happen if we don't put process in place and adequate controls to ensure that we avoid these errors. So it is end-to-end to ensure that everything is okay. So just to ensure that we are skilled together, let us all answer the below quiz. So a customer complains about damaged batch of repackaging hand soap. What must clause 8.2.5.2 let prime distributors do? A, they have to recall every product the company has ever sold to be safe. B, trace the batch to its original delivery and identify exactly which other units are affected. C, do nothing. Traceability only applies to raw materials, not repackaged goods. And the D, they have to wait for the supplier to confirm which batch was affected.
Yes, so far we have B, trace the batch to its original delivery and identify exactly which other units are affected. So far, most of all the answers being given are B.
Okay, thank you. I will agree. So basically, what this clause requires is suitable identification of outputs and a unique identification where traceability is required to avoid those risks. So we expect evidence like batch, lot numbers on the packaging unit, traceability register linking to the pack date, and source batch, and the recall procedure. So we are not even wondering what do we do to recall. So in this kind of scenario, we normally miss, you are likely to encounter common non-conformity on the packaging drops, the original batch reference, and also breaking the traceability chain. These are common non-conformity that you are likely to encounter. The key message for everyone on this subclause, basically traceability is only as strong as it is its weakest. Hands off, protect it at every repack. Don't be hands off, your eyes on every step. Okay, let's look into 8.6 before we go to another final subclause. And this is basically, we look about the release of products and services. And this is basically the last checkpoint after we have done all the processes. And remember why this step is important or why this requirement is important. Is again to double check to ensure that before we release, before we start busy on the recall, during our last checkpoint, during the release, we can still encounter some of the things that were not taken in consideration. So this clause requires verifying that planned arrangement have been completed before we release our goods to a customer. So nothing is dispatched until the responsible person has signed off, and that authorization is recorded, not assumed. So these have also to be documented in terms of all those sign-off are done before we read the documentation or before we read the material. At our company prime distributor, the system only shows green for dispatch once both the batch and the label checks are complete. Otherwise, it will be yellow and it won't be released, or it will be red, it won't be released. And this is what we have just defined, just to avoid the recall and the rest of the things during discharge. So verification as we read the material is very key to us as prime distributors, and we wouldn't want to be busy in the issue of recall, etc. So the key message here is the decision, not a formality. Someone named must own the sign-off every time. So it's not just, oh, we have done, take it, go out. Someone have to decide to take it out or not. And remember, this is at the final checkpoint. I like this because it is, again, adding confidence that whatever we might have lacked, then it is taken into consideration. Okay, let's look on the control of non-conformity output, which is the last subclause for this standard. Basically, 9001 is one of the longest part in clause 8. The rest, they just end up with few subclauses. But here we're looking forward to see, though we still have on clause 9, which is a check. We still have a process to check for compliance. But I like this because during compliance, we want to still catch before it travels. We want to still see whatever failed. We want to still have control of the output that fails. So this requirement basically it is identifying and controlling any output that fails to meet the requirement. So it is not used again or shifted by mistake. So at our company, Prime Distributors, so what we are doing we are segregation of non-conforming batches, and we mark them and we guarantee them at the area until decision is made. We don't just take for granted, and we don't just close the eyes and then it goes. Sometimes it might happen. I remember to have seen this in one of the basically manufacturing industry, where everything is done by machines, but you can still see some of these mismatches. And just to realize that as the customer, this particular product was not properly packed, and nothing is happening, or is little, is not meeting the required level. So, and this is because there was no verification during the discharge. So options are like correction, concession, regrading, or you reject, and the customer is informed if affected goods already shipped or not. So that is where the communication also chips in. We need to make sure that communication is maintained, because remember, in this catching up, in this process, in this step, we're already affecting maybe the delivery if some of the mismatches or the batches are guaranteed and they have to be rechecked or during the segregation. It might have been considered in our timelines, but we don't want to make sure that our customer is already making calls just because something have delayed. So depending on the option that you might take, the customer have to be informed. Every non-conformity is logged with the cause, with its cause and action tracker, and who is authorized in the decision, so that we don't lose anything during the process, and we have a clear lessons as we go back to not to repeat the mistake. The key message I want everyone here to learn is a non-conformity you catch up, you log it, is a control that is working. So once you miss it, a customer complaint is waiting to happen. So make sure that you capture it at your level, whatever is not meeting, and you take an action just to avoid the surprises from customer end. And as prime distributors try to put this sample log that we normally use for the non-conforming product and the corrective action that we normally take. So we normally have the non-compliance, non-conformity number for a particular product after verification, and they just a brief description, maybe a chemical drum received without safety data sheet, or maybe the packaged batch was mislabeled, or supplier evaluation is overdue, whatever we capture. And we don't end up with the symptoms. We just go into the root cause, and then we define the corrective action, and we make sure that we are tracking it. So with this, we are bring confidence to prime distributors management that you won't get calls from the customers complaining about the failed products within their hands. We would have a process at our checkpoint that ensuring that we can still capture those gaps. This is what is expected as part of the operation on clause 8.7. This, I think, our last example as we move forward to the other part of the discussion before we cover the management of change. Basically, is on the forklift near miss that changed the warehouse. So during a rush dispatch, forklift operator only to forklift operator reverses around a blind corner in the prime distributor warehouse, and the narrow misses. And narrow misses a picker stocking shelves. No one is hurt, but the near miss is reported. Investigation finds no design, designated pedestrian walk, no mirror at the blind corner, no operator had not been debriefed. Operator had not been debriefed on the right way of rules since induction. Within a week, management installs a corner mirror, paints a marked pedestrian walkway, and adds a monthly toolbox talk on the forklift pedestrian segregation. So what are we learning here? So operational control must match how we work, actually how things happen on the floor. And the near miss is a system way of showing your gap before someone gets hurt. I like the immediate action that were taken regarding the incident was just near miss. And I challenge most of you. Most of people they normally ignore to investigate the near misses and even never to handle them, either because they are too many in number, or some of them they are just ignoring. In any failure, in any lapse, there is always something to learn and improve. We don't wait until clause 9 when we are doing inspection, where incidents are already happening, like serious incident. Near misses are already flagged that, oh, something is not okay. So if we have eyes on watching on how we are doing things, on how things are going around the floor, it's easy to note small gaps and take immediate action and make sure that we correct it before it reaches to the high level audits where we need to have to take major actions. And I like the way they have been also embracing even simple investigation to this low level incidents. Okay, before I close the loop and go to other parts, let me address the issue of management of change. As I said, these have came into two different clauses in our standards. Basically, as I said, so clause 6, we are basically planning the change. So 6.3 QMS changes are always planned. So we are looking forward to see, we are weighing the purpose, consequence, system integrity, resources, and the responsibility whenever changes happens. How far are we aligned in terms of the resources, responsibility, and the consequences? Or is this something that will happen as a surprise? So we consider it as part of planning. On the other standards, on the OHS and the environment, basically on 6.1, we have risks and opportunities from anticipated changes identified before they happen. This is part of their planning, that something might happen and how are we prepared. So as prime distributors, basically, we want to not meet surprises, or we don't want to get confusion on how we control whenever change happen. We want to get prepared, and we're exactly sure on what will happen. Are we prepared enough in terms of resources and the responsibilities? Who will do what? Which will start? Which will end? Who will approve? That have to be set as part of planning, and when you are defining the criteria. So we are saying before opening the new Arusha Depot, for example, leadership, how did to assess the impact on QMS, EMS, and OHS objective and the resourcing, just to ensure that we have encountered anything that might happen during the construction of the warehouse. Let's say we don't want to reach in 6 months, because the big orders we're getting around Arusha and the nearby regions, then we find our depot is started to become small, and we are considering extending our depot, and we didn't have adequate budget. So we can use our commercial team to advise and focus enough, and that can be enough for us to budget and plan adequately. And we consider, okay, may the customer, may the need in the market increase. This is how we do. So this is how we normally approach the management of change in terms of planning in clause 6. Now, going into clause 8, basically, as I said initially, here we are now talking about how are we controlling? How are we actually controlling the change that is really happening? So clause 8.5.6, basically production services changes are reviewed and controlled with evidence of how and who authorized them. We want to see who requested. We want to see who authorized the change. And just to avoid the blame, and they don't want to find like we are losing ownership. We don't want to find that you were given a drawing to design something, maybe a particular storage building, and the drawing that you are given by the architect is telling you ABCD dimension. And someone is coming, maybe it's still a customer, but the different part of the department of the customer. You told this, and he is coming on site. He's saying, okay, oh, your warehouse, this the dimension of the room. No, this will not be adequate enough, because the order gonna be big, gonna be adequate enough, and I think your storage room won't be enough. So you have to extend to this dimension. Don't just implement whatever he or she is saying by words. So it means you have to really control this change. If you were you, if I was you, what do I do? So I just initiate the change. I need to make sure that all the authorities are aware of the change. So prime distributors have got the change request form. So I will just fill the form and bring to all relevant approvals, maybe HOD, supply chain manager, or whoever is responsible, the director responsible for logistics, whatever. Once the change is approved, and then I will implement the change. So this is how I control the change. I already planned I knew it would happen. Now I'm not just closing the eyes to let things happen or continue, but I want to make sure that I have full control of how a change was exactly done. Again, as prime distributors, the new highest ranking system is only used once the operations manager has signed off the change control law. So that is our license to operate the change. So if we don't comply, we don't see the sign off, then no change will be implemented. Regardless, whoever is bringing the change, whoever is forcing for it to happen, regardless of the deadline. So in clause 8, as I said, we are really on top of any change that happen. Is it done correctly as per specific criteria? We do have control of the evidence that is protecting our organizations against anything that might happen as a result of the change, or they don't want to impact any of the process. So in summary, clause 6 asks what need to change and why, and clause 8 proves the change that was actually controlled and safe once implemented. I think with this experience, I might have answered a number of questions and some of you, but I was still open to hear if there is anything that we might clarify in terms of management of change. And I understand this is one of the area where most of the people struggle. So the starting point, you need to have a process that is showing change management. You need to have all those forms that you are able to that will help you as a tool to implement your defined process as part of clause 8. Yeah, now I've been talking a lot. We need to be together. I have a group exercise. Joe, Paul, and Joanna, you help me on how to coordinate. So I want the team to do self-assessment. I've talked a lot, and this clause has been extensive, much enough. We have gone through the examples. I know everyone have been looking into how prime distributors are managing, but at the end of the day, we're all working somewhere. We all support some organization. I want you to do self-assessment on your organization. So you pick one operational process in your organization. You determine how it is controlled the way this clause requires. Is it properly planned? Is it properly documented? Is it properly resourced? We have adequate resource to really implement the control, and do we have adequate evidence? And in the chat section, you will have to share your reaction. And I think the moderators will be reading the reaction. We want to learn from each other. And at the end of the day, we draw a roadmap together. And but honestly, basically, I want to make sure that everyone here in this call is comfortable of making things happen and well controlled, and is not ready to make him fail in any of the clause. To be honest, of this any sub clause of the clause 8. So simply, in your organization, which operational process would fail an announced clause 8 audit today, and why? If today we are to say we have a surprise audit to your organization, maybe we're coming tomorrow to audit only clause 8, you are IM certified. Which operational process you're not comfortable of? Or is it the entire clause will fail, or some of the processes you are sure that you are not going to meet? On the chat box, ready for you guys to share your responses. I'm keen to learn response from your end, but together we'll finalize to see how we assist each other. Be honest. Thank you. Paul and Joanna, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nashon. So we are going to pick one operational process in our organization to determine how it's controlled the way clause 8 requires. That is planned, documented, resourced, and evidence. So your answers, you can put the whole story. You can pick the process, the operational process, and then you pick the requirement, and then you can explain how it is controlled in just one answer. Yes. I think we shall have some seconds before we receive some answers, since it involves
Sure. Let people digest.
Yeah. So, Joanna, which organization would you have picked?
Our organization, Descan.
Okay.
I hope she's certified.
All right. We have our front benchers already typing it in. We have Chaido Sit. Yes. Well, good to have you answer. So 8.3, design and development. In our NPD, not management of change, MOC, life cycle assessment conducted. So here in 8.4, they have a control of outsourced products and services. Procurement are yet to document the criteria for supplier selection and evaluation, and performance evaluation is not consistently done. So he's given two answers, one for 8.3, where there's states about design and development. They have no management of change. They have life cycle assessment conducted. And then for 8.4, they still have a procurement, which is yet to document the criteria for supplier selection and evaluation. Yes, and performance evaluation is not consistent. We also have Josiah, who says the warehouse temperature control. So I believe this is an operational criteria to do the control of temperature. So this is lacking. Two so far? Any more? For purposes of confidentiality, we are not sharing our company names.
Yeah, please.
So this is a green area, green zone.
Sure.
Learning purposes.
Let's be honest. Let them be honest, because we want to assist. This training is meant to bring impact to these people at the end of the session, to be honest.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Mr. Nashon, do you mind commenting about Chedosit's answers? They're quite interesting about the design and development for not having the management of change documentation and also the life cycle assessment, but yet the life cycle assessment is conducted. And then for the procurement system, they don't have the criteria for supplier selection and evaluation.
Yeah, okay. As we wait for the rest of the response, thank you very much for those who have tried to share. I will love your response. So basically, in all those mentioned missing processes that we are not confident, I would say the best approach is to start, which I will call operational planning. Ask yourself, like, do I know what I need to achieve on every aspect that I feel I'm not comfortable of? And they will mean setting the clear criteria by means of having a documented process before you even starting thinking on what you need to implement. Because remember, if it was not planned, there was no criteria set, there is no way you can avoid it. So be it designing, consideration, be it procurement, be it any change that might need to happen, we need to make sure that you have a COP, a process for the specific process, and make it relevant to the lead gap or risk that you want to address. And I'm sure with that, which is part of planning, it will also always say the necessary resources required for the implementation, and it will also say how you're going to control it by defining the criteria, frequency of ensuring that everything is okay. So yes, I will say no one is perfect. You won't have all the processes perfect, but the big area, the best starting point is to get it well planned by setting the criteria, and then you come to see what do I implement from the criteria that was set. Are we having other answers?
Nashon, there is a follow-up comment from Chaidosit, who says
Okay.
their SDS is not captured from suppliers. However, could you kindly repeat how SDS, that is the safety data sheet, is captured on the purchase order, the PO, and any other ways the SDS can be captured? Is it also an SOP? I think they meant, is it also a standard operating procedure? It's a challenge in our organization.
Yeah, so basically, this is part of operational planning. As I said, you have to clearly define the 8.1. You have to clearly define what you want, and in defining the criteria before you bring to the customer. I think I mentioned that in the purchase order is also good to mention that because you don't want to miss when the supplier deliver the product. Okay, I will say if you're handling chemicals, I will link this to one of the mandatory requirements and the non-negotiable requirement for my supplier, because that's the only way I know how my product is going to be safely utilized by the end user. So I would strictly emphasize in terms of clearly defining as one of the key areas you expect during procurement, whether on the PO or at whatever end, or during setting the criteria in assigning, selecting the vendor. And I've also put as a mandatory requirement. So depending on your organization, some people, they just include it as part of chemical handling process. So as part of a chemical handling process, which is part of the criteria defining what is expected to implement, we expect a line or paragraph saying that in line of the material submitted to our organization, it is mandatory that all chemicals of this nature, they come along with material safety data sheet at minimum mentioning A, B, C, D. So we have a standard way, the standard way of the materials that every manufacturer will have its own format of bringing, but at minimum we have that defined and clearly. So you can put it as part of the SOP as a requirement, and you can also, as a part of controlling it, you can now put as part of the requirement when you are verifying the material that is delivered. It is very important, and more important on HS perspective, you don't end up on just having it supplied. Many people, I've seen organization auditing them, they have a cup of sheet filed. Yes, every chemical is having the file, but the employees have been not trained just to understand the details of SDS, and knowing that the same employees are the one who are going to handle those chemicals. You are still not addressing the risk. We are not talking documentation here. We are seeing how we are really controlling. So the reason that these chemicals have to come with SDS sheet, it means someone who will be handling the chemicals is aware of the hazard, risk, and how immediately he can handle in case he came to interact. So communication, training, and ownership and awareness of the users is very key as you stress forward to having this as part of the requirement.
All right. Thank you so much, Nashon. Nashon, there are a couple of answers that are related to this activity. However, we are also trying to look at the time. Maybe we can.
We take one, then we continue.
All right. Can we read through and you have one general answer? We have. Yeah, sure. So we had Joseph who mentioned that Josiah who mentioned that they are missing a warehouse temperature control. Okay. We also had a comment that the ERP, that's emergency response plan for the operation, are normally missed. And then we also had a comment that the design and development, in design and development, most changes in design in process have no specific documented form. The management of change is partly done. However, the life cycle assessment has been conducted. So that's another gap. And then we also have another comment that receiving is done by both procurement and quality, but no one signs off the receiving manual other than the way bill copy SDS documents. No working receiving document. So maybe you can give a general answer for this and then we can proceed.
Yeah, so I think let's answer both and the rest of the reactions through this. So I developed what I call as a way forward towards closing the gap that you find in either of the sub-clause in clause 8. So I call it like a roadmap to the next step for those who can be honestly declare that I'm not 100% on clause 8. So you can design a plan. I said you prioritize where to start. So you can set some weeks where you contain the risk by means of flagging what is wrong. And you notify the owner, you document the control, you log it as a non-conformity, basically really pick it as a problem. And then you have another phase where you have to write the documentation, by setting the clear criteria. You communicate, you train the people, and then you start collecting the evidence against the standard expected in the document that they have just prepared. And then to monitor it and you get it stick to the people. You assign names, process owner accountable. You schedule follow-up, feed the lessons. So do it as a project, because I don't want you to miss some of the important areas or some processes. If you want to make your management system active, you can handle it strategically and ensure that you have a clear plan on how you address those, because they will require planning, they require control, they require implementation. At the end of the day, evidence at hand that everything is okay. So a clause 8 finding isn't an end of the story. It is clause 8.7 doing its job. What matters is the roadmap that follows if you find everything is not intact. So this is just self-assessment that probably primary students would do if they are there to check their readiness toward compliance, and in the range of green, amber, and red. Things like documented operation criteria exist, order for processing, receiving, inspection. Then they have separation, evaluation is carried out, but the evaluation criteria frequency are not yet documented, which is a partial. And then they are green on batch lot identification, which is well managed through the catching, enabling full traceability. They are not still good on emergency response procedure for chemical spills. The procedure exists on paper, but they have not been, it has not been tested or drilled without warehouse staff. They're also good on FIFO in terms of preservation control. They have good rotation, correct storage condition. They have it is documented. They follow it is followed in the warehouse. So these are kind of the things that if you also pick them, they kind of do like heat map high level rating on their end if they are to go there. So this marks the end. Before we proceed, Tim, these are some of the key summary of our 3 hours here online, and we want you guys to own these clauses and be able to implement. So number one, we are saying operational control is evidence, not intention. You have to make sure that you have the plans, you have the criteria set, you have the records available, not just good practice, not just in your head, not just saying it is in order, well aligned. It have to be there. Number two, I don't want to forget about the control. Follow the processes. If no processes, no control. Not the defense line. Also, transport, the packaging, supplies still need to be defined, and some additional verified controls. I also don't want you to forget that traceability protects everyone as you implement the quality management standard. A strong batch or lot trade will turn a wide recall into fast targeted one to avoid the recall, to avoid all those ambiguity. Last but not least, always practice to test your controls. Don't just file them. Make sure that as you go to sleep, daily or weekly, you are confident that my controls are really running and I'm comfortable to evidence whatever I'm asked. Must be practiced, not just written. So thank you very much. This marks the end of my message and my sharing with you guys.